All right, it's the top of the hour, and that means it's time for Two on One, the internet's highest rated talk show where two disciples theologians engage another theologian of the pop culture topic of his, her, or their choice. That makes me your co host, the Reverend Arthur Stewart.
And I'm your other co-host, the Reverend Stephanie Kendall. Arthur, it is good to be with you.
It is good to be with you. I'm so glad that you got your June hair back. I know that
I
we gift of the Magi'd each other, and like you went back to your old hairstyle for 3 weeks, but I never bought you a comb. But here it is. And are you having more fun?
I am. Blondes do have more fun. I've been blonde for like a year and a half though now, but this is just I feel like, just got
Yeah,
my
it is great. Um,
I
can
love
we
it.
talk about for a second the magic of Christmas in July as we wrap up today?
Yes, we
So our
can.
guests, we 12 days of Christmas, our guests. We
We
had
did.
4 Whitney Wallers, 3 Quadri Harrises, 2 Carrie Tannehills, and a Lara Blackwood Pickrel.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
I
I
love
like that we kind of did a countdown with our repeat guests and our new guest. And
We did, and I love our new guests, and I love our more established guests, and our new guests will become established guests. And if you deuces out there would like to be a guest as well, please head on over to the website 2on1project.com and let us know. My favorite part, Arthur, I don't know if you know, like how you feel about this, but I have a feeling about it. I love that our guests pick the theme. It has opened my understanding up to new things and new experiences, new like cultural understandings, new joys in my life. I talk about this all the time, and I realize that this is it's been a while, but like do you remember our show when Dan Livers came on and talked about the Ava Brothers? The
yes,
Ava Brothers are hands down one of my favorite bands of all time now. I listen to them almost daily.
yeah.
I have seen them digitally in concert 3 times now. And that's all thanks to the work that we are doing here on Two on One. And I think that that's the real Christmas in July gift is the learning of new things.
Well, speaking of Christmas in July, as you are no doubt aware, I'm lighting candles that are themed this month during our promo.
I love that. So we started with the candle of passion, and then the candle of style, which I think is my favorite, and then the candle of quality. What is next, my friend?
Today we light the candle of return.
Ooh, Advent does point us to the future and Christ's return.
Yes. Also sequels. We're doing Die Hard today, and there's many Die Hards, but really there's only one Die Hard.
All other Die Hard movies come from the original.
Right, and the franchise has made like $1.5 billion on an initial $28 million budget for the first one.
So the candle of return is about wisdom and discernment. Make choices that affect the future.
Exactly. And Jeff Wunrow Designs offers quality workmanship that is stylishly designed and passionately crafted, and it offers an immeasurable return on what one invests in their ministry.
It truly does. We talk a lot about Jeff Wunrow Designs. Jeff Wunrow Designs is our lead sponsor, but folks, we will not engage sponsors. We, Arthur and I, actually, we endorse Jeff Wunrow.
Yeah, we're probably not going to do like mattresses unless it's really good money and they send us mattresses and we like them. You see, Jeff Wunrow Designs crafts all kinds of liturgical textiles: paraments, banners, frontals, processional banners, copes, chasubles, miters. We focus on stoles for 2 reasons.
First, both Arthur and I own stoles made by Jeff Wunrow Designs, and we like truly love them.
And second, we know what stoles mean to ministers who are so liturgically inclined. This is the best option out there. It's why we're so proud to tout our special discount code and every week encourage you check out their catalog, look at what you can get.
Absolutely. A girl loves her customizations. But for our deuces, you know that you have the best option that is out there. It is 15% off your entire stole order at checkout when you enter the code 2on1, all one word, no numbers. So I would say letters. I always mess that part up, but there are no numbers. It is all letters. It is 2on1. I spell out Jeff Wunrow, TWOONONE. That's how you spell 2on1.
Yeah, you don't want to know how many times I've misspelled our email address because it'll be like
Oh,
to
same.
anyways,
All the time.
yourself. invest in your ministry. Your work is needed in the church, so go for the gold standard. Look good doing that so vitally needed work.
Oh, I love that. See the entire catalog of stoles and paraments and banners and liturgical textiles, especially as you're going back into worship, those of us that are opening our churches, or, you know, I don't know about you, it is July, thusly we are planning for actual Advent and Christmas because you gotta. And so when we are talking about that, we talk about how we're gonna adorn our sanctuary. And now that we are sponsored by Jeff Wunrow, I've been a big fan. I have been touting Jeff Wunrow stuff for when we open up and say like, hey, let's revamp this space and make it a little bit more welcoming and encouraging for people to come back. So if that's something that's on your list, or maybe you haven't even thought about it, I encourage you to go over to jeffwunrow.com, JEFFWUNROW.com after today's show and check out everything he has in store.
These still steal the show, and if you're gonna make it happen well. All right, let's die hard.
Let's
bring in Lara. Okay, I've hit admit.
Dun, 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 dun.
Just gonna point out. Okay, I was worried that she was gonna be wearing like a sweatshirt that said "Now I'm a guest." Ho ho ho. Lara Blackwood Pickrel, welcome to 2 on 1, and thank you for coming during Christmas in July.
Hello, it's good to be here. Thank you.
We are stoked to have you. Lara, for those of our Deuces, which is the official name of our fan base.
Because they haven't objected yet.
Well, yeah, 2 on 1. What's up, Deuces? Tell our viewers and listeners who you are. What are you doing? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I am the senior minister at First Christian Church in Smithville, Missouri. Most people don't know where Smithville is. Smithville is a little lake town that sits right on the top of the Kansas City Metro. So it's part of the greater Kansas City region for the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. And I'm hanging out here with my people, going to camp again for the first time in what feels like forever.
Whoa.
Thanks, COVID. But you know, I just got back from a week of summer camp. I'm headed back out to go keynote Aiders camp. Over the 4th of July weekend is when we leave. So I'm squeezing things in, kind of playing catch up and get ready all at the same time.
We love that. Arthur and I met at camp. So that's
awesome.
Camp has a special place in my heart.
And incidentally, a little bit of foreshadowing. I'm working on Kansas right now, the greater Kansas region, on actually acknowledging Aiders. So you and I may want to talk after the show. Because I was like, so when do we do sex camp when I got here? And everybody looked at me like, who's this highfalutin Texan?
That's for our Deuces out there that don't know, Aiders is sex camp for our 8th graders that are learning about their changing bodies and community responsibility and consent.
It's the only time we suspend the golden rule. We tell kids, do not do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Please. So Die Hard. This is a point of contention, and it shouldn't be. Die Hard as a Christmas movie. Obviously it is. It's Christmas in July here on 2 on 1. Why is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Lara.
Why is it not a Christmas movie?
Okay.
I mean, okay. So this has been a passionate question and answer for me for a long time. I end up in arguments with friends and family every year. I'm one of those people who I cannot resist. If I see somebody post this question on Facebook, I have to jump in and say, obviously, yes, it's a Christmas movie. First off, the music. I mean, almost the entire soundtrack is Christmas songs. That should give you a clue. It's a Christmas movie. It's set during Christmas. The whole point of him being, John McClane being where he is that it's Christmas and he's going to visit his estranged wife with the hope that maybe something will be different in the midst of this visit. You know, he's looking for his Christmas miracle, so to speak, in his own relationship. It's a Christmas party at the headquarters building where his wife works. When the terrorists show up, like Christmas is the perfect opportunity for them. Low security, you've got all of the heads of the corporation who are there for the party. Like it's this perfect storm that they're taking advantage of. Yeah, I mean, and then there are other Christmas miracles that happen for people in the midst of the movie. Like, it's totally a Christmas movie minus the irritating children who show up in so many other Christmas movies, which is
Okay,
one of
so
the reasons it's my favorite.
this right here, we should just end the interview. It's not going to get any better.
Done. Mic drop.
Period.
Well, no. So we've talked about in Christmas in July. We've talked about Love Actually, which we panned. We talked about Home Alone, which we decided
Love.
the shovel neighbor, it may be the incarnation of God, and
Yeah.
like Carrie Tannehill pointed out, like his hands bandaged up. Is it stigmata? And then we talked
Mhm.
The Best Man Holiday with Quadri Harris. What we defined Christmas as is there's a level of magic, and I think you're right. There wouldn't have been like a Flag Day party at Nakatomi Plaza.
Right.
The boss wouldn't fly in for anything else except the end of the year, and there is that magic understanding. John McClane flying in for a 4th of July barbecue isn't going to have a chance to talk to Holly Gentaro. Oh, I forget her last name.
Gennaro.
Yeah, but she's going by her maiden name.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you get the kid, like it pulls on the heartstrings of like the only kid that's in is his daughter. Like, is daddy coming for Christmas? You know, and it's like
Right.
it works, or it is. I mean, I'm totally with you. I posed to my family as we watched Die Hard last night. You know, is this a Christmas movie? And I gave them our parameters, and I was like, as we watch, like, I want you to think about, like, you know, how would you answer this question? And we all came. My brother at every turn was like, "There's a Christmas tree, Christmas, Christmas." Like, it's like he just kept pointing out, and he was like,
yeah.
and at the end we were all like, "No, this is." If you take Christmas out of this movie, it loses a little bit of the intensity and the reason for the whole thing to happen. So like, we definitely came on the side of this is 1000% a Christmas movie.
All right, I can keep talking to you.
Yeah. And
I also thought, like, I don't know, and what do you like? There is something, we talked about this a little bit in Best Man's holiday conversation, but is there a reason that holiday movies need that heightened sense of action? Like, you know, especially as pastors, we all know that, you know, what is going to happen is going to happen at Christmas time, right? Like, people are going to come out of the woodworks to talk to you're going to get all the things and people, and it's just, it is chaos. It's beautiful chaos for, you know, this kind of 6 weeks, let's say, period. You know, is part of that beautiful chaos of this movie translated for churches, and is that why we like it a little bit?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I mean, what I definitely see, like, just that heightened level of action that we get in all of the movies, like that definitely translates over to Die Hard. It's just a different kind of action. Like, I think that one of the reasons why so many people resist this being a Christmas movie is because there's violence in it. And it doesn't always explicitly get named that way. But when I start talking with people, it's like, the reason it can't be a Christmas movie is because it's too heightened. Because people are shooting each other. It's not just, you know, the chaos and the excitement. But I mean, we live in a world where people kill each other over Black Friday sales, getting ready for the Christmas season.
Absolutely.
So why would violence preclude this whole thing being a Christmas movie?
So I'm gonna shift it out of there, because I was raised Presbyterian, vaguely Presbyterian, but it still counts. So I am I don't want to say fascistic. I'm a fascist about it because fascism is coming back in vogue, and I don't want to associate with it. But I have strong opinions about Advent. I struggle when people want to sing Christmas songs during Advent.
Me too.
Yeah, and I succumb because Happy Honda Days is you know, it's like, what are we doing what did we do on July 4th when it was a Sunday? That is The Outside World Affects the Church. Anyways, maybe this is more of Advent because it ends before Christmas.
Yeah.
And Home Alone ends on Christmas Day, and Best Man Holiday. And so maybe what we've been talking about the last month is Advent. There is that heightened sense of anticipation and preparation. And there's almost the chaos, because I don't know about y'all, but like midnight on Christmas Day, I turn off my phone, I eat some shrimp, and I go to bed.
Yeah.
Although now I have to help Santa in the middle of the night, and that's obnoxious. Kids are.
Santa's needy.
Isn't this a spoiler, Chef? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, no, I said I help Santa, and that's fine, but like he fumbles the lock and everything else. The door sticks a little, so I got to be up for him.
Hmm.
Anyways, I'm sorry, but yeah,
Sure.
maybe this is more of an Advent movie, is the question.
I like that. I mean, when I think about the majority of the Christmas movies, including Die Hard, there really is like, it's not just anticipation. There's almost a sense of desperation
Ooh,
in a lot of the plot lines. You know, it's people, like everything is terrible and they're yearning for their miracle. And somehow Christmas is the goalpost that is suddenly going to fix everything and make everything better.
Christmas.
And I think that that's definitely the case. Like you can feel that going on with John McClane, that like, you know, his marriage is falling apart and the hope is that Christmas is going to be this, I mean, in the context of this film, I think it's fair to say silver bullet. It's going to be the thing that's going to fix it, that somehow Christmas is going to lock in that miracle. And so like part of his whole attitude towards these terrorists is that they are totally jacking up his opportunity to be able to make things happen and get back together with his wife. He's supposed to be at this party having a little Christmas magic with her, and instead he's dealing with these frickin' German terrorists who are running around
So
getting in his way.
Okay,
oh yeah,
I have a question on this. So as I watched the movie last night, I kept writing little like notes for myself to be like,
you took notes?
not like real notes, not like old school notes, because I do like how we have turned the show into an actual conversation and not some sort of an interview. But as I used to do, like coming up with like a big list of notes. But I'm as my deuces know, I am in California, and so this is it's a little earlier for me, so I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget things. Also, I hadn't seen this movie in 20 years, and so it was just like, let's kind of remember. But
a whole list of notes, so
perfect.
You're not alone.
Great. I also, so at the like halfway through the movie, when you realize, he hears the gunshots, he's getting dressed, he hears the gunshots, and he's like barefoot and he's like engaged, right? And it's like he's got to go. That felt much more like a answering to a call, like a vocational call, than it did to like trying to find his love. And so I'm wondering how you guys see like John McClane's actions. Is he doing things for love or for his call? The first thing we really hear out of him is, trust me, I'm a cop. And also, like, so for me in this day and age, I'm just like, absolutely not. Like, that would be the end of this movie for me. Like, I'm on a plane with someone that's like, trust me, I'm a cop. I'm like, oh, you're the last person I trust. Great. Have a good time.
Yeah.
By the way, sorry, side note, Home Alone has a very anti-cop message to it.
It does.
Like, weirdly.
Which goes along with my vibe. We've come a long way, or we're in different spaces in which, the hero's first line saying, trust me, I'm a cop, is meant to be comforting. For me, I'm like, absolutely not. Like I'll go over with Severus Snape over here. I feel way more comfortable. And but as he's going through things, I was like, that he's after it for his wife or to get his family back, and we're meant to be pulling those heartstrings. But as people who are called to their work, right, our job is a lot different than other people, like bankers, let's say, in this regard, right? Like some people may be called to banking, but I think more often ministers talk about being called to this work, and in a similar way that I think often we've heard cops kind of talk about being called to this work. And so I wonder if John McClane's motive, in your opinion, is more out of call, like his engagement throughout the entire movie, right? Like, right. Is
it call as in duty, or is it call as in the work that he specifically can do, or is it obligation?
Yeah.
I think it's this continuation of the tension that they've been hinting at in this marriage relationship that he's got with his wife. I mean, that both she and he have been wrestling with their own callings. and the way that their callings are sometimes conflicting in terms of needs. The way that, I mean, if he's a cop, his calling has been keeping him away from his family a lot. So I'm sure that in the background, that's part of the tension that they've been experiencing too. And so, I mean, I see in that moment when he's there, like making fists with his toes in the carpet, trying to calm himself down to go into this party, and he hears the gunshots and he takes off. Like, part of that is just muscle memory. Because it's something that he's done 1,000 other times. You hear the gunshots, and in that particular vocation, you run in the direction of them. Like, that's one of the taglines that people talk about when they talk about cops. And this is certainly a movie that through the years has helped to solidify that understanding of what a police officer is like. Like, I was watching this movie, you know, this particular time with a different lens going, oh, I see the way that this has helped to build some stereotypes and some understandings while it worked against some other stereotypes too. So like, I think he always has that conflicting thing of this is his calling, and yet he also, you know, he hears his wife scream later, and like that jolts him and pulls him in a different direction. He's constantly getting pulled to two different sides.
Ooh, that tracks for ministers too. I feel like,
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, family and work.
Yeah, I think that I that question came out very much deeply out of my understanding of, you know, the pull that I see all of my clergy friends and faith leaders writ large go through of being called to this work and enjoying our work, you know, and like wanting to do this work. There's a, you know, I live quite far from, I live on the other side of the country from my family because I'm called to this work, and they understand that. We've had those conversations, but it's hard because I want to be with them. And that tension that you know, kind of helped us nuance and name out is, I think that is, I think we see that. I mean, I would guess that a lot of ministers would look at that and be like, oh, we may not carry those guns and have this violence to the work that we do. Well, hopefully not. But we understand like that struggle of between you know, passions and home and call and all that.
I mean, I always made it a point to give student ministers Christmas off, and to say you need to be here through the last Sunday of Advent, and then you're off for 2 weeks. Because if you live far away from, or even near your family, these are the last normal Christmases you'll have if you do congregational ministry. I've had to explain to my biological family, I would fly on Christmas Day, and I finally had to say, I need 2 days off. Like I need.
Yeah, I can't do that.
And then I'm married to someone who's not clergy, who like gets it. He just hates it. He absolutely hates that he cannot be home in Arkansas on Christmas, and I don't blame him. And we're working on that. So,
yeah, honestly, I think that that's where some of my own ambivalence about other Christmas movies comes from. That in so many Christmas movies, one of the driving themes in the plot is this desire to get home from Christmas, or to be, you know, reunited with someone, and it always ends up in that way, like you get home, and sometimes with minimal trauma, even like it just manages to happen and you get to be there. And that doesn't happen. I mean, I'm in a 2 clergy household, you know, a clergy couple with 3 churches between us. Christmas is always hard.
Sure.
So the struggle, I definitely, that resonates with me. Generally, there aren't gunshots in the midst of us trying to be with people at Christmas, but I still resonate with the struggle. Yeah, God willing.
So can I shift us up a little bit? Can we talk about Hans Gruber for a minute?
Always. We can talk about Hans Gruber this whole show.
So first of all, I do want to show my notes to the camera. It's a sticky note that says "Die Hard, hard to die." That's all I wrote down. And I wrote it down while you guys were talking about your notes.
If anyone wants to know the difference between Arthur and I, it's that I show up to generally 2-on-1 with like notes and thoughts, and then Arthur's like, watch a sticky note I made right now. And I mean that in the most sincerest way in which we're a good partner.
3 and a 7. It's that. It's that.
Exactly. Lara, what is your Enneagram? Do you know your Enneagram?
I'm a 1. I'm a note taker too.
Got it.
Hey,
I like it. Ones, twos, and sevens.
I'm so thankful for ones, because if not, we would
Amen.
we'd all be on fire and
All day long.
So sorry, Hans Gruber.
Hans Gruber.
Rickman's first.
Yes.
One of the great. Okay, the question is this: is Hans Gruber really a villain?
I mean, I think it depends on your definition of villain. In one way, like obviously, yes, because he's the head of this terrorist group, murder, blah, 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 whatever. But he's also one of the most engaging characters in the whole movie. He is just fantastic. If anything, he's got some of the spirit of whimsy that characters that are children in Christmas movies usually have. But he's got it. Like when he sees that fabulous model of the bridge and is just like, oh, a model, I love models, and just gets gushing about it right before.
And his song is Ode to Joy, which is just, I'm sorry, I love Hans Gruber.
Hans is like the kid in the candy store.
Well, he is. He's Charlie Bucket.
He's the kid in the candy store of murder.
Right.
Does he actually murder anybody?
Well, no. So that was one of the notes that I have over here, and I'm wondering.
I shot 2 people in the head, point blank. So there's that.
Well, yes. Okay. So.
But he does. There is a point, and it took my whole family by surprise when he says this. But at one point, he's on the walkie, and he says, "Wound them."
Wound them.
He doesn't say kill or like it is less of a destructive call than it is. I mean, it's destructive to a fault, but it's not like dispose of them, murder. It's vaguely less.
It's a distractive call rather than a destructive one.
Yeah, and I thought, well, that's interesting that the villain isn't out for complete destruction, but only for personal gain. And that makes him a villain for sure, but it makes him less of a villain than other people who are just like murder, like rape, murder, and the village.
Hopper in Waterworld killed something.
Yeah.
Right. Right. He has a lot more nuance. He's actually a person who's doing these things rather than just one side of the binary, evil.
So my wound him question comes from, do we do a disservice in scripture to the villains of scripture by not nuancing them more fully to allow them to be kind of these really engaging characters? Like, are we too afraid that the villains of scripture are going to be charismatic and someone we want to engage with more, or our congregants are going to want to engage with more? And is that why often we push them to the side and focus on the hero? Does the church need a villain?
Douglas Adams writes in The Prostitute and the Family Tree about the difference between parent stories and grandparent stories. And parent stories are, look how just and moral and upright I was. Here's a time when I was almost tempted, but of course I wasn't tempted, and you should be like me. And that's like most of the children's curriculum we have for churches. Grandparent stories are, no, your parents did really stupid stuff, and I'm going to tell you all about it, even though your parents are trying to make a completely opposite point, because you deserve to have the truth, because I love you. And the Bible is meant to be more grandparent than parent stories. It's John Bell on the Iona community always talked about when kids would go out for a tour, inevitably a teacher who has no religious input would say, can you tell them a story? And he'd always tell the story of Yael driving the tent peg through Sarah's head. Because they weren't specific. And also it's a really great story. I think Die Hard is a grandparent Christmas movie, to your points.
I like that.
And I think it's, and incidentally, Frank Sinatra was supposed to have first crack at John McClane. I looked up that piece of trivia because the author of the book from which the movie was adapted said Frank Sinatra has to have first crack. He was like 70 when the movie was.
Oh my God.
So just think of that.
So
I can't even imagine what that would be like.
That's so wild.
If there's parallel universes, that's the universe I want to go to. Where 70-year-old Frank Sinatra
Is John? It's like Yippee Ki Yay.
Yippee Ki Yay, you
Yep.
pinko. So
No, but I was thinking, you know, as we're planning, I'm planning out the rest of the year and preaching calendars and things and Bible studies, and as we are wont to do as faith leaders, you know, how often are we engaging not only the villains of the story and allowing them to be full and nuanced people, because we always read, you know, and that's critical race theory. We always read ourselves into as the hero rather than as the villain, and or letting the heroes also be complicated villains, right? People love David, but like the first thing we really like, there's some things we know about David where we're like, ooh, sir, that's not consensual. That's real rapey. And we don't talk about those things in Bible study often because people are like, but the Psalms and we love him and all the things. And it's like, okay.
We do the same thing to God.
We do the same thing to God.
I really like that whole parent story, grandparent story thing, because it really does, like, I think part of the reason why we make our children and youth curriculum the way that we do is because deep inside as church, we are scared that somehow too soon our kids are going to ask questions like, wait a minute, God killed everyone in a flood? Everyone?
Well, you're in a boat and there's just dead people. We forget that part of the story.
Right. Like, that's a horror story. That's not a beautiful, decorated nursery story.
Here's a rainbow over dead people.
Yeah, we do need to, maybe we should start that. Every church has a mural of Noah's Ark somewhere. We should start a movement to start painting in corpses like floating in the water.
That's a heart ministry for someone out there. Yeah.
Jumping back to Alan Rickman on that. So it's his first role. And I would argue that he's working 4 times as hard as anyone else in the movie because it's his first role. Incidentally, the drop where he falls, I'm just full of trivia about this movie because I love this movie so much.
I'm into it.
The way they got that look on his face is they promised him repeatedly, because it was like a 40-foot drop that they edited him into. They were like, we promise you, you'll be fine. We will drop you on 3. And he was terrified. And they did 1, 2. And that look of anger and betrayal was because, and he held character and he walked off set for 5 days.
Wow.
Good for him.
Well, good for him. I know it's a little too method acting.
Amazing.
No, but do we do that to our church too much?
Well, here's what I'm suggesting.
Oh, yeah.
Do we do that to young clergy, and do we do that to new leadership?
Cool.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Yes. We all said that we weren't going to answer anything with a yes, but Arthur, yes. Period.
Yeah,
1000% do we do that?
Okay. Well, next question. Or how about this? How do we prevent getting young leaders to walk off the set for 5 days? What can we do that still, I guess the question is, how do we bridge experience and passion in the church? Because
that's a question I wasn't prepared to answer, but that is a good question.
I can at least offer a story.
Do you want
to? Oh no.
Do you want me to? Oh well, no. I was just thinking, like, how do we? So, as someone who is second career, who followed this call intentionally after leaving a job that I really loved and a job that was cool on paper, and like ministry is not the coolest job on paper most days, but making movie trailers is a really cool job on paper, you know. But this is the job that I'm called to. This is the job that I am passionate about. This is the job that, you know, God had been calling to my whole life. I just didn't know how to listen and call into that. And I think that it's more about transparency and authenticity than it is about anything else for both the church, the clergy, and the congregation, right? Listening to, having people come in and listening to, why are you here? And honestly, why are you here? You know, what does it mean for you to be a part of this community? Clergy, what do you need to, you need, 2 months off a year to give ministry your all? Great. You know, so often we don't listen to the stories or the needs faithfully, and we continue to keep ourselves in these structures that have been put up for whatever reason. And And so like we don't allow for the miracle of Christmas to be alive for the entirety of your call. We do it in very specific spaces, but if we were to allow the spirit to move faithfully, the magic of Christmas to be there authentically and always, then I think we would have less burnout, because we would be able to receive the transparency from which we are asking you to show up with, and say, like, what do you need? Why are you here? What are your gifts? What are your gifts? But also, what are your passions? Because if your gifts are not your passions, then you're going to get burnt out from just using your gifts. And, and all of that. And so for me, I think answering Arthur's question is very much about saying, like, showing up, saying what you need, believing it, and being creative enough communally to say, let's make this happen. Showing up with the ho ho ho, in an elevator shaft, and saying, this is what I need, this is who I am, and this is what you're gonna get, and believing it. Yeah. And not saying we're gonna change you into something else. I don't know if that even answered the question, but
it did. Lara?
Well, it reminds me of something that my colleague, back when I had a colleague, and I did, that's a different story. It's not a bad story, don't worry. No, but we, in the midst of our like welcoming new members, whenever new members would come up and say in worship that they wanted to join, part of the prayer that we did with them together, part of the introduction, always contained, and still contains now, but COVID made that weird, this whole line about, like, we're going to disappoint you. Mm-hmm. This church is going to love you. These people are going to be here with you for your highest highs and your lowest lows and everything in between. And we're going to disappoint you, and we're going to break your heart at some point, because that's what happens in relationship. That's what happens when people's passions sometimes meet at cross purposes. But being able to like build that into the framework even of our expectation is that we're all messy because we're all people. And so you're not signing up for this thing where you're going to feel perfectly fulfilled at all times. And
so
sometimes your cup is going to empty some before it fills back up again.
That brings us up to Al.
Yes.
Al the Punk. Because Al can't do anything except support, and Al has no power most of the time. And this is my final answer. Al is the church on its best day. How you doing in there, Pat?
Oh.
So act surprised in about, 20 minutes. I might come up with another answer. But okay, so Al, played by the undefeated Reginald Val Johnson. I like to imagine that he's in Witness Relocation and then he goes to do Family Matters.
My brother said it's the best crossover. Like, it's like
I know.
It's such an epic crossover episode of Family Matters and Die Hard.
Well, so
I know that, and The Breakfast Club with the deputy chief.
Yes, and the classic 80s villain who's always kind of a villain.
Yeah.
And also Robert Davi is in as an FBI agent, and he was in License to Kill like right after that, and he fake played anyways, okay. We also have suggested, I'm sorry, this is a side note, Die Hard is the mother sauce of good Christmas movies. So there's the connection in Love Actually of Alan Rickman being a nuanced villain. There's the connection in Home Alone. Daniel Stern steps barefoot onto glass ornaments, wearing the same fake feet that like they got the inspiration from Die Hard and worked with the production design. I haven't found the connection to Best Man Holiday yet, but it's there. It's there somewhere. And then of course Die Hard itself is connected to Die Hard through perichoresis.
Like the Kevin Bacon of Christmas movies.
It is, of good Christmas movies.
Yes.
That's going to be even more controversial. I love it. The real question now is, how does Die Hard tie into Gremlins?
There's got to be a way.
You can't get any of them wet after midnight.
Well, Al is faithful. That's the only thing Al is.
Yeah.
How do we? And honestly, he's an exhorter, exhortation. Which I once described as, you're a cheerleader for Jesus and you're a cheerleader for people who love Jesus to a youth. I kind of stand by that. I'm not an exhortationist. How do we cultivate that gift in the church without it being condescending or unnecessary or shallow?
Mm.
Can I tack on
Yep.
one of my questions? And it goes towards Al, because I think I think it'll all tie together, hopefully. But Lara, as someone who is you're a solo pastor, right? Like, is that what we talked? So John McClane as a solo pastor, right? Like, you need someone else. Like, do you get mavericky when you are all by yourself? And does it rein you in to have colleagues that are good reflective pieces and supportive pieces for you? Like, do solo pastors get too mavericky for whatever reason, in the John McClane sort of way, when you don't have an Al, right? Like, because you see John shift in his kind of understanding of his goal once he is connected to someone on the walkie, right? It changes. Connection changes us.
Yeah.
And so what, I guess the question for me on top of that Arthur's Al question is, like, how does connection change us as we see in the relationship between Al and John?
So one thing, I know that connection, absolutely. I mean, it's this lifeline, especially as a solo pastor. During, the first 6 months of the COVID pandemic, it was really hard. And I know it was really hard for everyone. That's the understatement of the year. But just feeling that feeling of being untethered.
Yeah.
That feeling of being untethered and just kind of flailing. And about 6 months in, a good friend of mine who is a pastor at another church here in the region, she and I basically kind of organically decided in a moment that we were going to pretend as though we were co-pastors of a 2-campus church.
Oh.
And so, like, we shared sermon series, and we were doing video church. And so sometimes we would share sermons back and forth so somebody could have a day off, and checked in, and like everything basically except the pastoral care piece, which was ours to do alone on our campus, we shared in. And that got us through. I think that we're both still here because we made that connection, and we decided, like, we're going to yoke together because this is too much for either one of us to pull.
You guys.
It was amazing and continues to be amazing. I think it was really good for both of our churches too. Now, Al, like, I love that comparison of him to the church. I also see him, like, he's ministering out of his woundedness, because he's someone with a calling who was wounded deeply in his calling by a mistake that he made.
Which he and he owns, and he is repenting for.
And he's naming to strangers on a walkie in the middle, like using his growth and his growing edges to help others move along.
Al's the church on its best day.
Al's church.
But I also see him, like, he's waiting for his wife to have a baby, and he's essentially birth coaching John through this whole experience. He's like the Lamaze partner on the other side of the CB.
Which makes it a Christmas movie too, because it's his wife being birthed.
Yeah. It's even more of a Christmas movie than I thought it was.
It's less. I think I love the idea of the yoking, and I wish that it was more intentional coming out of COVID, that congregations that shared. I know my worship crew, we called ourselves the Skeleton Crew. I bought them all Dia de los Muertes, like sugar skull pens when we went back in person, which we all wear like very secretly. It's our little thing, but like we would do 2 services in a row so that we could take a Sunday off every now and again. Charge. The advice that I give to associate ministers or solo pastors, especially on their first call, is you have to have a minister you can gripe to, and it cannot be your boss, and it cannot be in your congregation. You have to have someone who you can call and say, these stupid idiots need to whatever, because there's just going to be bad days, and that same kind of idea. So from Al and being accessible, can we also talk about Argyle? Because Argyle is the church on its worst day.
Just partying in the basement. Not paying attention.
Doesn't need to pay attention. There's no world outside of the 4 walls. And it's the music we like, and the seating is assigned.
Yeah. I mean, I do appreciate the faithfulness of Argyle, that he's paying attention enough to say, this plan that you have may not go the way that you think it's going to go or the way that you want it to. So I'm going to hang out in the basement just in case you need me.
I'll be here and you can come to me.
Right. It's not perfect,
Mhm.
but like he's at least paying attention enough to sense that that this day is not going to go quite the way that John has built it up in his head
Mhm.
when he's getting off that plane and heading in. But it takes the abrupt news bulletin to shake Argyle out of his reverie and get him rolling.
Just like in a
That
crisis.
sounds familiar.
Too. Yep. I'm telling
Yeah.
you, I've got this. Brad Lyons, if you're watching, I'm gonna write the Christmas of Die Hard.
Oh, I love this. Okay, can I switch us in just a little different direction? Because I have a question that as I watched it last night, and I was like, oh, this is me in a weird way. So one of the things that I very much love about this movie is that, and Arthur, you may know the actual fact of this, but like, isn't this one of the movies that says fuck like the most times? Isn't it like it has like in its dialogue so many, and it punctuates it well. It helps move this along. Does the church do itself a disservice by limiting the language that we use?
Oh,
as someone who loves to swear in my congregation, the running joke is like, you must cut my mic if I am not on like in any sort of like, if I am not in the pulpit, my sound guy knows to immediately cut my mic because I swear often. I find those words to be holy and punctuative of my life, and God has given them to me for lots of different reasons. And I realize that there are some people find them more appropriate than others to use in certain situations. Right. But I was watching this and I was like, if they made this movie without all the swearing, it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't be what it is. And I hope one day we can get to the church where a good F-bomb is what is needed against anti-racism and anti-white supremacy, like work or whatever. Yeah. But like, we're too afraid to do it, right? Like, what does it look like to say a certain, to go into your pulpit and say like, stop fucking being racist?
Yeah. And if racism and poverty and hunger and war don't deserve those words, then what does?
Well, the Tony Campolo line.
Yeah.
Last night, 40,000 kids died of hunger while you slept, and most of you don't give a shit. And in fact, most of you are more upset that I just said shit from the, yeah.
Yep.
It's, I want to expand the question if I could.
Please.
So all language is inadequate, and it is a constant reminder that I say in our worship team meetings, all language is inadequate because all language is changing. And all it is noise we make that kind of points to what we're talking about, especially when we talk about the divine. The Lord's Prayer, which is not actually the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer is make them one, but whatever, what we call the Lord's Prayer. Does your church do it in good old King Jimmy English?
No.
For the most part, yeah.
For the most part, thy will be done. Spiff, I'm sure y'all's is not because you have a more progressive flavor.
Because I rewrote it for my congregation, and so we all say kingdom and God and yours and.
Well, and like when we try to shift to like creator or use mother language or anything else, people are like, there's comfort in father, but
for some,
and there's therefore it's back to Argyle in the basement. It's the language and the comfort and the.
I totally agree, and I still think it. We still limit ourselves in lots. It is inadequate, and yet we hold ourselves in limited ways when we don't allow for the fullness of our language to be present from the pulpit, or in Bible studies or whatever. I'm as careful as I need to be for the care of my people, to not, to disrupt in stages, let's say, rather than a full disruption of their relationship to certain biblical characters or, certain scriptures that they love. And I'm like, oh, but that's not what that means. Like, in the same way that I think John McClane does too, right? Like he's disrupting in sort of stages, which is why he never like brings in other people. And maybe he doesn't do this, but part of my thought in my question on this is like, does he do a disservice to, do too many people die? Are too many people harmed by his inability to say, I'm now connected to the police, come on it, you know, like this is John McClane, I'm a, like, why does he not identify himself as an officer? Why does he keep himself so closed off from who he is? I realize he's going through the rafters and he's trying to be stealth, but like,
Right.
does he do, are people harmed in the way, in his selfishness, in his, I need to keep this to myself and not reveal my fullness, my vulnerability?
See, I always took him keeping his name and his identity close to his chest as a way that he was trying to protect his wife. Because in some ways, she's in more harm's way than he is, because she's right in the belly of the beast. But I don't know that it has to be that read that way. It could very well be any number of, you know, like maybe it's his training that he's not supposed to be involved in things like this when he's not in his own jurisdiction.
Right.
Well, he is
maybe
just
it's
a
just that
he has no authority.
Right. So he doesn't want to identify himself as a cop for that reason. Maybe he's just a maverick and he likes doing things on his own. It may be a combination of all three.
I thought, as you know, at the very beginning when it's like he's on the walkie and he's talking to people, you know, and it's like everything, I'm not going to use this as one of my final answers, but I had thought about it, but the way they speak to each other in kind of riddles rather than saying like, this is what I need, this is who these people are, this is what is happening, has a lot of it kind of feels like the Psalms. Like there's just kind of like these rhyming, and everyone is like the dialogue of like the script dialogue of Die Hard sounds like the Psalter in a lot of ways.
They call it the Die Hardalogue.
The Die Hardalogue is equivalent to the Psalter because there's
it's also a lot like apocalyptic literature.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, that you've got to talk in code because you don't trust the person who's listening in. And so they don't trust the feds. They don't trust some of the other officers who are there who have already proven that they really don't have the measure of the situation. And so they're trying to talk on another, and the terrorists are listening in too. So it's like Revelation over a CB radio.
Absolutely.
Well, no, and listening in CB, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to, I'm, if we did this without it being on video, apparently people are much better on like conference calls than video calls. And I always step on folk and I apologize. It's really not my intention. Can we talk about Alan Rickman's horrible American accent for a minute? Oh, help me. Help me. It's very clear he's a bad guy and he's a German, right? Or I guess a Brit who's pretending to be a German, or however.
I did the accent threw me because I was like, isn't he German? Or then he was speaking with a British accent, and then like I was like, which I mean I recognize that he is was a British human, but like I was like, where? And I get it, people can have accents and speak different languages, but I was like, oh, this makes him more worldly, maybe. I mean, like, because it's not just like you don't get to just pinpoint to one particular area and say bad.
Right.
Does the church in its efforts to save people, I'm going to use save because I don't think in the disciples, in most of the disciples, we understand the church's role to save. It's Christ who has already done so. But in the church's effort to welcome all visitors, to be, all means all, and that means we don't draw any lines in the sand, do we sometimes let the Hans Grubers of the world get the, like, do we ignore I can't do it on when I want to. Do we ignore Porta? Yeah, no. Do we ignore very obvious signs? Like when somebody's clearly faking a trust me accent. Or do we trust
I think
people who are scamming us?
I think back on some past churches that I've served where we very easily let in clear manipulators because nobody wanted to say, like, you're a beloved child of God and your behavior sucks. Your behavior is hurting people, and that's not included in all means all. You as a human, yes. Your behavior, no. But nobody was willing to say it, and so we just let, like, they drop the accent real fast once they find out that you're going to let them in anyway.
The BTK killer, Dennis Rader, here in Wichita, was president of his church council when he was arrested for being a serial killer.
Yep.
So,
I mean, that's not surprising. The people that I was, most, harmed by growing up, which kept me out of the church for 27 years, were Christians.
Yep.
Like, and that's, and that's the dialogue, right? Like, if people come up, oh, you're a pastor, and they immediately trust you, or, oh, you're a Christian, and they immediately trust, depending on your parts of the country or your parts of the world. And that can be so harmful because it's just, it just can be, because there's no, it's an affect. It's not a way of being. And affects can be really harmful when they're not transparent.
To be fair, I think on the other side too, sometimes the church, we are Hans putting on the bad accent when we try to be all things for all people.
That 1000%, absolutely.
Or when we say, like, we start talking the talk about something that we actually haven't done the work for yet, and so then you start to get put in a bind, which I know I've done in my own personal life as a pastor. All of a sudden you realize that you're not quite prepared to be talking the talk that you're talking, and everybody can tell that your accent sucks. This person clearly is not ready to be in the middle of this conversation.
Well, Laura, speaking of the middle of this conversation, we are actually approaching the end of it. We can talk about Die Hard forever. Here's the beauty of it. There's like 9 more Die Hard movies. So there's at least 9 more opportunities to come on 2-on-1. Or if you're like...
And they're all entertaining, but they're not as good.
Yes.
I disagree. I will say one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid is Die Hard with a Vengeance, because I loved the little riddles that they have to do. And so... And I've just always, for whatever reason, Deuces, sorry to break it to y'all too, my favorite of the Die Hard movies is With a Vengeance.
I do like the pairing of John McClane's character, Bruce Willis's character, and Samuel L. Jackson's
exactly. I mean, you also just...
I like that there's someone who is fully strong in who they are enough to call John McClane on his bullshit.
Yes. I loved it. And the riddle me this and all of that. It was very, I don't know.
We are coming up on our final question. Spiff is the one who asks it because she does it so well.
Oh gosh, Lara, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for coming on and suggesting and talking through all of this with us. And you're a delight. And I can't wait to...
What a gift you are.
Yeah, what a Christmas gift you are.
Both of you too. I love watching your show, like longtime watcher, first time participant. I love it.
We really appreciate, because you comment, you do the things, and we really appreciate. You're one of the original Deuces, so really appreciate it.
OD.
But what biblical story, theme, character, book are you most reminded of in Die Hard?
Okay, I don't know if this is the one, like the biggest one, but I want to name it because it gives me a chance to talk about my favorite character, and we didn't actually talk about her. We never really talked about Holly, who is another nod to Christmas in this movie, just with her name. Like there's the Holly who shows up in the Christmas movie. But when I watching her, I think about all of the scrappy, intelligent, quick on their feet, breaking rules.
I'm so excited.
All of those women in the Bible, like whether we're talking about Jael or we're talking about Esther or we're talking about Rahab, the women who are reading the situation instantaneously and figuring out what they have to do in order to survive so that they can help all of the people around them. So like while John is doing his thing and he's blowing crap up, she's knocked over the photograph to instantly cover her relationship. I mean, that kind of feels like Esther, right? And she's doing the work. And then like when she could totally be keeping her head down, she's the one who's standing up and going into Hans and putting herself on the line to say, these people need the bathroom, and this woman is pregnant and she needs a bed. And Like, she sticks her neck out for her people in order to make sure that they're okay. And so I love her character. I love that she doesn't fit the gender norms that were certainly in place in the late 80s, because they continue to be in place now. The fact that, you know, her current rejection of her husband's name is what gives her the cover to be able to do what she's doing. Like, so big snaps for Holly and the women of the Bible.
Arthur, can I go only because mine
Yes,
is on?
I would like you to go.
I'm so excited. So I chose Holly too. I watched, my final answer came when during the scene, she goes to Hans and is like, this woman is pregnant. She needs a bed. We need the bathroom. She's standing up, sticking her neck out. But I went for the Matthew 15 Canaanite woman who tells Jesus that even the dogs from the table eat, because that is, in biblical terms, Jesus has just used a slur. And Jesus, I mean, not to equate Hans and Jesus, that's a weird thing, but you know, well done. But you know, Jesus uses a slur. We can't just get around that. Like, that's biblically accurate, right? And she puts him in his place faithfully and kindly, and respectfully, and not that that even deserves respect. I'm not saying that, but you know, in the way that Holly shows up and says, for my people, this is how I'm going to stick my neck out and correct this course, and you know, and be like, here we are. And so I'm very excited.
Assertive.
She's assertive, and she doesn't back down to authoritative power and the things that should scare her, or that we have told that women are afraid of. She's not afraid of power, and neither is the Canaanite woman, and nor should any woman be. But yes, Arthur, your final answer.
I first want to say, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. I'll work on it. I'll work on my own. I want to go along this line. I'm going to refine the Holly thing into Michal, David's wife, because Michal and Jonathan in the David narrative swap gender norms. So Jonathan is, I will shoot an arrow, and if it lands over in this field, it means that you are safe. And I will say to the boy, go and Michal is like, yeah, we're going to get you a rope. We're going to get you out of here. I'm going to make a goat hair like dummy. I'm going to take, and it's the passive versus the aggressive, I guess, forms of operation and deception. And Holly steps into that. I don't think it works that John McClane is therefore Jonathan, of like, Jonathan loved David with all his soul. I'm also going to reiterate, Al is the church, which makes Carl Winslow the church, which makes Steve Urkel the devil. And that is the way to do it. Lara Blackwood Pickrel, thank you so much for being our guest about Die Hard today on 2-on-1. I'm going to put up our screen while we wrap up our show. This has been a great month, and you have been the capstone in this great month as we have talked about real Christmas movies, and Die Hard is one. If you disagree with us that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, you're welcome to keep that opinion to yourself. But if you have to, you can hit us up on social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram.
Like, subscribe, and do all the things. But Lara, thank you. I hope you will come back and talk more Die Hard, or just anything. You're a delight.
Yeah, you're not.
It's been a pleasure.
Die Hard.
You're not. But Deuces,
you know, worse things could happen.
Sure.
Yes. Well, and this has been 2-on-1. We are so thankful, and Merry Christmas in July, everybody. We'll see you in August.